The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Wade Michael Page, an Army veteran, entered an Oak Creek, Wisconsin Sikh temple yesterday and shot 6 people dead, ended up dying himself after being shot. An incredibly tragic situation, especially coming so shortly after the horrible, horrible situation, Lewis, that took place at the theater in Aurora, Colorado, of course, where many, many more people, of course, died and were injured. The FBI is investigating this as a domestic terrorism type incident. It's also being considered whether it's a hate crime. What came to mind to me right away when I heard about this is the common misperception that Sikhs are Muslims. And of course, implicit in that Muslims are evil. That Muslims are evil and deserve to be shot. And that is actually one of the main storylines that now is developing. It's still being investigated, and we'll certainly know more about that at some point. But Lewis, this is something that I've heard everybody from college professors to, just such a widely known theory. The idea that because the Sikh has a long beard and a turban, they are often misperceived as Muslims, even though they actually have nothing to do with Muslims.
Hard to imagine that for some reason this man had a serious problem with Sikhs. Very hard to imagine.
It is, right. If we take it at face value and say, no. He knows the distinction between Sikhs and Muslims. It's just the Sikhs that he really had a problem with. That's, of course, hard to imagine. Not because Muslims are evil, but because based on the portrayal of Muslims in the media, many people have gotten the idea that Muslims are dangerous and evil.
Right.
Now, according to sources in the Army, Page enlisted in April of 1992 and was given a less than honorable discharge in October of 1998. He served at Fort Bliss, Texas in the Psychological Operations Unit in 1994. That's concerning to me, that somebody who is capable of carrying out such a heinous serial mass crime like this was at some point working in anything called psychological operations as anything other than a patient is concerning to me.
Yes, very strange.
Of course, at the time, quite a long time ago, 1994, things may have been very different with him back then.
Clearly.
40 years old, he was killed outside the temple in a shootout with police officers after the rampage, which of course left the congregants of the Sikh temple that were still alive hiding anywhere that they could, including closets and all over the place. Satpal Kalika said she was in the front room when Wade walked in. She said that he was a 6-foot-tall, bald white man. Worshippers said they had never seen him before at the temple, and that it seemed like he had a purpose and knew where he was going. That's a quote from Satpal Kalika. I'm wondering whether, as we move forward here, the Sikh temple shooting will be covered in the news the same way as the Colorado movie shooting was. I'm guessing there will be differences, in part because this is now almost starting to build a trend, because it came so shortly thereafter. So it may not be reasonable to expect identical coverage, but we have to consider what difference there will be comparing something that took place at a non-Christian religious place versus what took place at a movie theater.
Yeah, I haven't seen, partially my fault because I haven't been paying that close attention. I haven't seen much coverage of this story yet. But yeah, who knows? I mean, is Fox News going to call this what are they going to call it?
That's the question, really.
Yeah.
What will Fox News and right-wing media call this? And whatever we see them call it, we then have to compare if this was a Christian church and the shooter, maybe he was a white atheist, maybe he was another religion, maybe he was Muslim, he or she, even though realistically most of these shooters are male. How would Fox News be covering it differently, right? Is there a war on Christians? If that takes place, would we now say that there is a war on Sikhs or a real significant issue with Sikhs being misperceived as Muslims? What will the Fox News coverage be? Not so much in the breaking news moments, which we've already observed, but once we start getting into the commentary shows and the discussion shows and the analysis shows, what will it be? I don't actually know the answer. What would you expect, Natan?
Well, it remains to be seen, but I guess our expectation would be that it wouldn't be covered the same way, and that it wouldn't be put into the context of a war on Sikhs or Muslims if the idea is that the gunman mistakenly thought that these were Muslims. We're going to see the idea of a lone psycho because he's, a white Christian, as you said.
Typically, Lewis, as we know, whenever it is domestic not necessarily right-wing terrorism, but domestic terrorism not perpetrated by minorities. Sometimes they're Christians, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're right-wingers, sometimes they're not. It is always
The lone wolf.
a lone gunman acting completely separately from any influence from any groups, media, society, culture, or context that may exist in this country.
Lone wolf, isolated incident, just a lunatic.
So we'll continue covering that.